Hello! Today I'm going to teach you tactics for studying tarot. This video kicks off the Teaching Tarot series for this channel, which I'm very excited about, so subscribe if you're interested in learning tarot. All of my teaching will be based off of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck drawn by Pamela Coleman-Smith. Today I'm going to show you two tactics for studying the Major Arcana. One of them I have used for almost a decade, and the other one I've only used for about 3 years, but it has become so prominent in my teachings that I use it for every tarot class I do. In fact, in the future, I will be doing a full video on just this tactic when I teach the Major Arcana. So let's get started. The first tactic that I'm going to teach you for studying the Major Arcana is to pull the cards that coincide with the number on the Major Arcana card. For example, we have the Magician here, and his card is number 1. Here we have the first card from all 4 suits of the deck: Pentacles, Swords, Wands, and Cups. I put them in this order because each suit coincides with an element. Pentacles for earth, Swords for air, Wands for fire, Cups for water. The best piece of advice that I can give you for learning tarot is to actually look at the card. It took me years to figure this out. I would pull a card or 3 cards and look at the book and read what the description was and then move on with my life. I almost never looked at the cards until I started getting serious about learning the deck. If you look at the Magician's card, you can see that he has each tool from the 4 suits, along with sacred scrolls in his upper right hand. Now there are a lot of symbols in this one card that I will be going over when I teach you about the Major Arcana as a whole. But for now, what I want you to do is think about what these cards mean. So when you think about what do I know about what lilies mean, which are in this card, what laurels mean, which are in this card, or a crystal castle, or the dove of peace. What do these things have to do with magic? This will give you a deeper understanding of the Magician, and it will also give you a deeper understanding of each of these 4 cards. So now we're going to run through an example with the Lover's card. Here we have the Lover's card, along with the 6 of Pentacles, 6 of Swords, 6 of Wands, and 6 of Cups. I find the Lover's card to be very difficult to read. There are a lot of interpretations for this card. Some people see this card and they think it is true love or soulmates or twin flames. And I struggle with the concept of twin flames. I think twin flames tend to burn down the forest. I also feel that the Lover's card is more of a launching off point and less of a long-term situation. The Lover's card can take you from this passionate, excited, flirtatious place and put you into several different locations, including something that is really emotionally fulfilling, like the 2 of Cups, or something that is destructive, like the Devil card or the Tower card. The interesting thing about this type of study is that each one of the suited cards that matches up with the Lovers is also a complicated card to read. If you look at this card, the 6 of Pentacles, you can see that this person in red is giving people money. If you look this card up in one of the books, it will usually talk about giving to charity or keeping your finances balanced. But in my experience, when I pull this card, there's also a strong chance that the person who I'm pulling for believes they're being treated like a charity case. And if you look at the card, you can gain that understanding by realizing that there's more than one person in the card. The last thing I'll say about this card is the scales. Yes, it can mean keep track of your finances, but it can also mean that you're in a situation where you're keeping close track of every transaction between you and someone else you're in a relationship with. Let's say it's your best friend and you guys go out to lunch, and she orders a glass of wine and you don't. You have water. And then at the end she wants to split the bill and you get into an argument over how she ordered a glass of wine and you didn't, so you shouldn't have to pay for the wine. That kind of keeping track of what's going on usually happens when you are concerned about being taken advantage of, or you feel like you've already been taken advantage of and you're trying to set a boundary. Now we have the Six of Swords. The Six of Swords is a really good example of how, even though swords are air cards, they do deal with a lot of emotion. So whenever you see water in a card, that represents emotion. And when I first started reading, I would get kind of confused about why there was so much water imagery in the sword cards. But I think most of the time it's because the cards are encouraging you to make intellectual choices instead of emotional choices. For this card, you see here where the water is rough and they're moving into smoother water. This is usually when someone has left a bad situation, and sometimes it's a physical situation, sometimes it's a mental situation where they are moving out of those troubled, stormy thoughts into a place that's much calmer mentally. Then you have the Six of Wands. This card is all about victory. There's action, there's self-growth, there are those laurels that are the victory laurels. This card is definitely about a victory. And I've had this card drop for very specific things, like a court case or a discussion or argument that I was in that I was really trying to handle properly. This card can also come up for victory over yourself, victory over a situation that you've been going through, or even if you are in a position where you need victory over an addiction, this card will sometimes come up. That being said, it can also branch into a bit of ego, because instead of just being about the victory, there's also this big parade. And yes, you can give a lot of examples of why that kind of thing is needed for morale for the other people, morale for yourself, things like that. Excitement about what you went through and what you accomplished. But either way, this card can venture into ego, so you really have to be careful. I did have this card come up one time for someone who they really were trying to pursue growth instead of sort of this party life that they had been into for too long. But it came off in the reading like they were trying to prove it to themselves more than they were actually actively trying to live that life. Now we have the Six of Cups. This card is one of the most complicated for me. Well, it's not anymore. It used to be a really complicated card. This card, if you look it up in the book, it says it's about nostalgia. And I could never understand why it was so annoying to me until I took a class with my Aunt Samantha, and every single person in the class had a problem with this card. So So she talked about why people tend to have problems with the card, and it really helped me out. A big part of it is that I did not have a great childhood. So nostalgia doesn't mean positive things for me. I have some positive memories, but I don't have a lot of them. And usually when people are talking about nostalgia, their positive childhood memories revolve around their parents. Mine do not. One thing I really appreciate about Pamela's art is the way that she's able to express the duality of these situations and these cards. Specifically this card, because if you look at this card, you see all of this color and sweetness and the roses being given to the roses, The lilies being given from one character to another. It's very, very sweet. But you also have in the shadows this person who's walking away in the background. And that's for people like me, or for people who have that darker side of their childhood that really affected them. So when this card comes up, in general, it's saying that you need to embrace some of that nostalgia, bring some of that childlike happiness and wonder back into your daily life. For people like me who don't really have a lot of childlike wonder from my nostalgic memories, what I need to do is think about what was it that I wanted to have as a child that I wasn't able to have. So there's this idea that you kind of court your younger self. Take yourself out for ice cream, take yourself out and buy a coloring book, go to an amusement park, go to a movie. Something that you would have wanted to do as a kid that you feel you should have gotten to do with your parent. You be the parent now, you take your younger self out, and that will help you in your healing process. So, what the hell does all of this have to do with the Lover's card? Well, like I said, that's where you can see the complexity of the Lover's card. Because what are things that happen in relationships? You share your childhood stories, you share things about your childhood with your significant other that you wouldn't share with other people. You share your victories. And sometimes that ego boost comes from the person that you're with. Hopefully, you're traveling together from troubled waters to clearer waters. Sometimes you're not. Again, the Lover's card does not always end in this magical relationship. And lastly, with the Six of Pentacles, the number one thing that people fight about is money. So this goes into sharing those finances, working together, and having your scales balance between each other, whatever that looks like for you. It looks different for every couple. But the other side of it is when you're in a relationship and you feel like you're being treated like a charity case, that is one of the hardest things, aside from like the really big stuff. That is one of the hardest things to go through because you love this person, you want them to pay attention to you, and you feel like they're just giving you crumbs. As I said before, this way of studying the cards can really help you to understand the major arcana at a deeper level, but it can also help you understand the minor arcana because you know that every single one of these cards in the suit is affected and ruled by the Lover's card. Here is the second way of studying the major arcana that I really find to be productive. I learned about this tactic about 3 years ago, and I have been using it ever since. This is all about the Fool's Journey through the world. For this method of studying the major arcana, we're going to use both rows from the picture I showed you before. So you'll take, for example, cards 1 and 2 and 11 and 12. And then you'll use 3 and 4 and 13 and 14. So as I said, we're going to study each of these cards as a set of 4. The Magician and the High Priestess both mean do magic. But the Magician is all about that wild, go into the forest, build a giant bonfire, and manifest your life. Whereas the High Priestess is more about study and intuition. There's a quietness that goes along with her type of do magic as opposed to his. Now, for the record, these cards have many layers of meanings, and I'm going to expand on those meanings, some of them, the ones that I find useful, when I teach my class on the Major Arcana. I'm only giving you some of the surface level stuff right now because this is an example, and I want you to have the tools to be able to study the cards this way. So try to look for things that you notice. Both the Magician and the High Priestess are outside. They both have elements, the Magician with his table and the High Priestess with her tapestry, the pillars, and her seat. Those are all elements of things you would normally have inside or man-made elements, but they are both physically outside. The High Priestess has a lot of religious symbols within her card, and the Magician has all of the tools from the four suits. He's also holding a sacred scroll, and the High Priestess is holding a sacred scroll that is outside of its casing. That also applies to the fact that her kind of magic is more about learning and knowing the magic, knowing the history, whereas his is about that innate ability inside all of us to do magic. Then you compare to the two on the bottom, the Justice and the Hanged Man. For the Magician and the Justice, their similarities come with the Magician is a master of his craft, but Justice brings some of that responsibility and balance. You can see that with the scales there. So they're both in red robes, but Justice is a lot more about action than he is anything else. Whereas the Magician offers a lot of, I don't have an agenda here, I just am in the forest building this bonfire, you happen to come along, I'm willing to teach you and do magic with you. Justice is like, you need to make a plan and then execute your plan, and I don't really want to hear about your plan until you've shown me that you're going to do it. With the High Priestess and the Hanged Man, you have the High Priestess who's all about learning and self-empowerment, and then the Hanged Man who is all about release and seeing things from a different perspective, self-sacrifice, and mystery magic in the universe. I'll go into more of what I mean about that in the Major Arcana video, because I know it's a weird saying. So when you look at these four cards, you can connect each one of them to the other card, and it will help you to understand. One, it will just get you to actually look at the card, which is so important. And two, it will help you to understand each of these cards at a different level and the story that the Fool is going through on his journey. Just to be clear, I am not going to teach you about the Fool's journey in the way that most of people have. Not because I don't have respect for that teaching, it's just that it's everywhere. You can find it in a million places. The same way I'm never going to teach you about the Celtic cross. Not only do I never use that spread, I also don't think it's worth my time or yours to go over something that everyone has heard of in the tarot community. So it's still the journey of the Fool through the world, but we're not going to focus as much on the Fool experiencing these things as we are going to focus on the cards and how they apply to each other and what we can learn about them because of that. I hope you enjoyed that. Please leave questions in the comments and I will definitely get to them. If you are interested in learning more about tarot, be sure to subscribe, as I will be going over the entire deck over the next few weeks. There are a couple of books I want to recommend to you, as I will be referring to both of these over the next few weeks while we do the course. The first one is Queering the Tarot by Cassandra Snow. And the second one is Essential Tarot Writings, which is a collection of essays about tarot. If you can find either of those books at your local library or bookstore, I highly recommend getting your hands on them. Thank you so much. See you soon.